Today I'm chatting with Paul Stephenson, founder and sales performance expert at EGOSTREAM. Paul has over 2 decades of working with technology companies to help drive sustainable quarter-on-quarter growth. Recently, Paul has been working with us here at Webtrends Optimize. During this podcast, he shares his unique perspective on our business looking from the outside in. Paul, could you explain a little about what EGOSTREAM does and how you work with companies such as ourselves?
Yes, good question, John. EGOSTREAM is a professional services business that has a heritage of 25 years working with the technology industry predominantly at helping tech companies grow. We offer a number of services, particularly around sales scale and working with venture-backed organizations, pre- and post-investment, predominantly to help them drive sales growth within their set markets. So we have a deep heritage, a very successful track record, small niche business, a caring business who, fundamentally enjoy what we do. So we really do sort of work with, software companies, e-commerce businesses, service-led businesses, etc. And, overall, very much tech-centric professional services company.
And why the focus on tech?
Well, I think obviously it's high growth. It's been a very sustainable industry sector for us over the last sort of 25 years. Very enjoyable, very dynamic. Yeah, I mean, it's good fun and high paced. I think in the early years we were very much working with American companies coming into the UK European market. So we're helping them set up, get established with a footprint, helping them scale sales. Working from a plan point of view and then getting involved with implementing the processes and then developing the people to implement those processes to drive growth. About 10 years ago, diversified and looked into predominantly working with founder-led, entrepreneur-led organizations, British, call them mid-market, SME. And then latterly over the last 6 or 7 years worked with a lot of business that have been driving growth from $1 million turnover to 5 million and upwards. Very pleasurable end of the market because you can affect value. I think the corporate end, it's enjoyable but not as. So we tend to specialize in founder-led organizations, private, that are looking for high added value professional services around scaling sales and growing their business.
Moving on to our own relationship, what was it that excited you about what we do and convinced you that we should work together?
It was interesting, this question, because I remember my very first conversation with Matt Smith, the chief executive here, and firstly, I think because he was north of the border helped, so we'll kick that in. But it was just, you could hear the dedication in his voice. And I was in the car, I can remember exactly where I was. I was coming through Bournemouth actually, and I was just coming around the roundabout, and I think I'd reached out to him in a marketing campaign, invited him to one of my dinner events, but he was good enough to actually respond back, and we had a quick chat, and you could tell there was a lot of passion and depth in his voice about what he was looking to achieve. And from my point of view, I was going through a business discovery process at that stage, but he was just a nice guy that kind of was on point with what he wanted to do, and he gave me the history of the business, about where the business had been and how he'd managed with his top team to pull it out and set it up, and what his purpose was in the business. And I think all of those sort of things struck very quick for me, and then, in turn, I turned around and said, well, I think next steps for us, Matt, is to get together. And he said, how you fixed Friday? So, there was a sense of urgency about him as well, which was really good. You could just feel the dedication from the get-go, and you just think, wow, this is interesting. But at that point, you also, when you put the phone down, you assess and thinking, is this real? Because you don't meet guys like this every day. And it was just fresh. And then obviously I met up with them the following Friday. I remember it really well, and I met the top team. I met his head of operations and technical, and it was just a great setup.
you have a unique viewpoint on our business because you're basically outside.
Sure.
And although you're connected to the inside, without looking to get self-praise, could you explain what you saw in our business, or what you see in our business, I should say, and things that we should be talking to our customers and prospects about more?
I think one of the things that really attracted me, coming back to that conversation on the roundabout with Matt, was actually lived up in the first meeting that when we met over at Goodwood, was the dedication. And the term I'll use, and it's something that I always look for in sales teams actually, and this rippled right across this business, which is unconditional commitment to success of the client. They were totally customer centric, and their whole world was technically and commercially all about helping advance the customer. And I actually really liked that, because the revenue and everything was important without question, because you've got to be commercially savvy, but equally it was that dedicated unconditional outlook. Again, it was the passion. Hopefully I'm answering the question, or have I?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. That's good. Yep.
Yeah.
Leading on from that, and that obviously leads nicely to my next question, is that during the last 4 to 5 months, many industries such as retail, travel, hospitality have gone through radical changes just to survive, never mind making a profit. A company like ours who supply technologies and services to those have seen a knock-on effect. How do you see us positioning our business to help those affected get back on their feet?
I think the absolute wonderful thing about Webtrends Optimize, we're a small niche business growing. And I think in these turbulent times, I think we stand for a good cause. I think if you look at the end of the day, we're all about, online efficiency, online performance, and results. And I think that if you're a retailer that's classic at the minute, that's looking to reach more of an online presence, then I think Webtrends Optimize is sat right at the heart of this right now. And, we're not a huge business that are suffering too much turbulence. We're actually on the precipice of growth. I mean, as a company, we're growing customers. And, John, it comes back to one of those fundamental questions you asked me at the get-go here. I look at companies and how long it takes to open up dialogue with customers and conclude business, because clearly there's got to be a commercial element to everything.
In the next however long it takes to get to this, and I hate to use the phrase new normal, how do you think technology companies are going to fare in the next 2 to 3 years?
I think the tech industry at the minute is going through a significant shift without question. I think old world technologies, big clunky ERP systems, etc., supply chain, all the big, 9-10 month sales cycle organizations are probably challenged right now. I mean, they're driven on quarter by quarter results. They're serving the stock market. So the big conglomerates will be going through quite significant shifts. That said, there's a lot of new innovation coming. But if you look at it from a stock market perspective, we have an old world right now that's dying. And that's evident on a day-by-day basis with the results and the redundancies that's kicking in. But new world efficiencies are kicking in, and there's only one thing that's leading that storm, and that's technology. So I think businesses, major industry sectors are looking for quicker deployment, cloud-based services, easier to sort of firstly understand in a saturated tech industry. There is so much technology out there right now. I think for CIOs particularly, it must be very challenging when selecting technology within their environment for strategic reasons. So I think it's a mix, but old out in with the new. So I think there's almost like an inflection point where some areas of the industry are actually struggling a little bit, but equally some areas are flourishing because of the deployment. And if we look at, it's not a particularly pleasant thing to say, but there is mass redundancies going on across the UK, particularly at the minute with some of our big households.
You're listening to the shortened version of this podcast. To listen to the full version, visit your favourite podcast player and search for Webtrends Optimize or The Big Lift.